Greetings and salutations, my friends. Welcome to my continued coverage of E3. Today we are looking at the Sony PlayStation Conference. We're going to go through each of the games that was talked about and shown and see what we thought, what was missing, and give it an overall review. So it started off in typical PlayStation style. They seem to have got this knack now of being able to put on a show without it looking really tacky. Like, the first thing was they showed this massive crowd at the theatre. It looked really good. And then they had some really nice Indian music, a little stage with some Indian music going on, bit of sitar. That's about the only Indian instrument I know, so we'll go with that. And then they had this waterfalls with lights showing on it, and it was all good, and it was like, that's nice, I love it. Then the first thing they showed was the new DLC for Uncharted 4, The Lost Legacy, with the female protagonist, what's her name? That one. The other dark-haired one. The woman that used to be in Farscape and Stargate actress. That one, you know what I'm talking about. It's gone out of my head. It's 3 a.m. I've lost it. That looked good. More Uncharted, can't be a bad thing. Then they showed straight into more DLC, which was the DLC for Horizon, the Frozen Wilds, out this year. Looked good. More Horizon are good. It sold amazingly well. Really popular, really high-rated game, so that can only be a good thing. And then they showed some Days Gone. So Days Gone, previously, they'd shown, like, the massive zombie attack, and they were kind of... It was all about, look how many zombies we can fit on a screen. That was the difference between all the other zombie games, and that looked good. This time, they showed a bit more normal stuff, and we saw some zombies, but we also saw some gangs and stuff like this, and it just looked a bit generic. You know, hiding in, crawling, like, you know, crouching through bushes and throwing a rock to distract and then sneaking up and killing somebody, and I was like... Randomly, there was a bit of the showcase, the bit of the video where he walked between these bodies that were hanging off, and they were like zombie bodies going, rah, rah. And then they had some Cirque du Soleil shit with dudes hanging off ropes going rah, rah, in the theatre. You know, I'm all for that bit of randomness, but I like it. Yeah, I was less excited than when I first saw it, to be honest, because it did look more of a generic game. They still had the horde of zombies coming in. They had a scary zombie bear in barbed wire, as you do. I thought it looked okay. I need to see more information, but I think it's going to be kind of generic, to be honest. And then we saw Monster Hunter World, which is really interesting, because that's generally, for a number of years, been a Nintendo thing. But now it's coming to the PlayStation 4. It's also coming to the Xbox and the PC, I believe. And... you've got a ridiculously massive sword. You're fighting ridiculously large dinosaur-type things with massive nostrils. It looks pretty good. Early 2018, they were talking about the release date. Nice to see it on the other consoles. I've never been a sort of Nintendo guy, so I've never had the chance to play Monster Hunter. So I don't know if it's going to be an MMO or one of those sort of shared world things that you can see. But I thought it looked pretty good. I'm interested to see more. And then the next one was Shadow of the Colossus Remastered. What? Shadow of the Colossus Remastered. Because they've already remastered it once, I believe, for the PlayStation 3. So they remastered it again. They're really ringing that one out. If you've played Shadow of the Colossus or the remastered version, you're probably not going to bother with that one. And then they showed a bit of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. It's got Guardians of the Galaxy in, so, you know, that piques my interest straight away. It looks like it's got a sort of full-on story mode, but it is a sort of, you know, the fighting game you'd expect on the outside. But a little bit of story. I'm not a big fan of fighting games, so I probably won't pick it up. And then they showed a little game, a little indie title called Call of Duty. Call of Duty. Funny joke there, because it's Call of Duty World War 2. They showed a bit more of that. It's Call of Duty, isn't it? World War 2, which is actually my favourite genre, but I think it's kind of, with Battlefield 1 coming out and getting that old school feeling, I prefer this to space. I think most people would say that. I've heard news that the single player is only going to be from the Allied perspective and possibly only the American perspective, which is a little bit weird. I think a bit more variation, playing different characters, maybe even playing on the Axis side and you know, having a bit more variation in the story would have been good, seeing it from everybody's perspective, but I don't know if I'll pick it up. I'm not a massive fan of multiplayer Call of Duty. It's just not my thing. If the single player is long enough, I might pick it up. And then we went on to the virtual reality section. If you've watched my other videos, you know by now, big fan of VR. No. So they talked about PS? That's a slip of the tongue. PSVR Skyrim, because apparently we can't get enough Skyrim. It's literally everywhere. I've got Skyrim on my microwave at this point. They've literally released it for every device known to man in every shape or fashion. It's Skyrim VR. These were little sort of short snippets of games that they whizzed through quite quickly. The whole show was actually shorter. I'll talk about it at the end, but shorter than I expected. But I like the way they sort of whizzed through each of these VR games, which I have no interest in whatsoever. And then they showed this thing called Starchild, and it was so hard to work out what it was from the trailer, from the video. It looked like a sort of 2D platformer, which is weird for VR. I don't really see the point. Is that so you can move your head to move the camera? I guess. We need a lot more information before I can even piques my interest. And then they showed Inpatient, which is a VR horror game, because nobody's done VR horror before. It's brand new genre. And it's set in a hospital as well, just in case you needed that horror. Go obvious, go mental people in a hospital, called Inpatient. Again, it's VR. And then, just kept getting weirder at this point. Final Fantasy 15 Fishing in VR, called Monster of the Deep, September 2017. It's what everybody's been asking for, to be honest, I think. It's a big call for the VR fishing market of Final Fantasy. So that's a thing. And then they showed a sort of shootery game called Bravo Team, where it looked really generic. Made by Supermassive, another one from them. What can I say about it? You've got guns and shoot people. There was not much more to it. Like I said, these were really sort of short videos, but there was no information. And talking of no information, we then saw a game called Moss, which seems to be a mouse with a gauntlet with a sword that pops out. And he was swinging it about a little bit for about 5 seconds of the video. Rest of the time, just wandering about. And that was literally it. So, it's hard to talk about games when they don't show you much. It's maybe like an action, darker Stuart Little. That's what I'm going for. That's going to be on the box, I think. Yeah, we'll go with that. And then, so that was the VR section done. They whizzed through it relatively quickly, so I was quite happy with that. None of it piqued my interest. And then they showed God of War. We've seen this before. We've seen actually a lot of these games before. I was quite surprised. Or Dad of War, because it's all about the morality. I love the idea. I'm really hyped for this game. I like the idea of, rather than just being this dude that who actually started to look a bit like me, if I had much less fat and actually had a muscly body, I've got the baldy head and the beard. I am the Dad of War, right? But I like the third person aspects to it. The fighting looked really sweet and crisp, and there were some really nice special effects. The shieldy spinning out poppy thing and the axe, and like a lightsaber, it just goes zoop. That's all good, and it looked really nice. I think that there's some issues with the child services if they saw this game, because he drags his kid to some weird, shitty places against giant monsters, like in a little rowboat against a fucking great snaky thing. But I quite liked the aspect of having the son, because it gives the story a bit more morality, and there's lots more story of him talking to his son and showing him the ropes, because the son's supposed to be this not interested, not living up to daddy's hype. Ooh, God of War. Living up to God of War, it's got to be quite difficult for a kid. And it sort of kept flowing through thick and fast, is the words I'm desperately searching for. Then they showed some more of Detroit, Become Human, the new David Cage game. Quite a big fan of David Cage games. I'm going to be picking this one up, I think. It's like the Android revolution. There was a scene in it where there was a sort of police drone thing flying towards them, and you saw exactly the options that you could do. So, do you jump in the bus stop and pretend to kiss the woman? Do you hide behind that car and stuff like that? And they've really sort of pushed this idea of the story really changing depending on your choices. Now, You've probably heard that in a million games. Hello, Telltale, just looking at you there. They say that, but it's very hard to do, because if you imagine like the story arc, and if you make this choice, it goes off in a different direction. You're basically building all these separate games that some of it you might never see. So that's going to be very, very interesting to see how far it splits, really, and what does it really matter with those choices. Like they were showing this sort of, oh, do you want to be a pacifist, or do you want to go fucking mental and throw a pipe bomb at a shop window? You know, is that your only choice? Are you like good or bad? Is that the morale choice, you know, sort of thing? So I'll wait and see, but it looks very promising. And there was this weird bit where he seemed to be able to go up to these androids and touch them, and they would turn to his side, like sort of, think Matrix, where Agent Smith was just going and sucking them out, and they turn into Agent Smith. That's what it looked like. Then they showed this another little game called Destiny 2. See, another game we've seen before. Didn't show much of it. Nice cinematic-y thing. Destiny, looter shooter. I think it's released on September the 6th, and then I think the PC version's coming later. Yay. I might give it a go. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. I'm kind of more interested in Anthem. I'm not massively interested in either, to be honest, but I imagine the Destiny guys are a little bit worried, because from what we've seen and heard so far, the Destiny seems to be just an add-on. You know, it's Destiny with some shiny new glittery things. There's been nothing. It doesn't seem to be anything revolutionary about the whole game, this sort of looter shooter genre as it is now. Yeah, I imagine that they're a little bit worried about Anthem, because that looked a bit more interesting, to be honest. Being able to fly around, being able to go underwater and do all this stuff totally separate. I think it could be an interesting one. I think Destiny may have just sort of rested on their laurels a bit. We'll see. We need more information. We need proper gameplay videos, decent ones, and we'll find out. But, nah, I'd love to know in your comments, Destiny or Anthem? Okay. Then the next one, they showed quite a lot of this one, which was the new Spiderman. And as soon as I've seen any of this Spiderman footage before, also another game they've shown before. Remember Spider-Man 2, which was swinging around the city? That is what I wanted to have. Since then, Spider-Man games have been... The movement, swinging around and stuff, wasn't ever as good. It was like clinging onto thin air and you just sort of swing about. This movement on this looked beautiful. The fighting looked like Arkham with more acrobatics. There was a cool point where he sort of shot this sort of weird web trap onto the side, and this guy walked past and it sort of sucked him in and pinned him. There was some lovely sort of webbing action going on, and the movement through the city. There was a lot of QTEs in this video, and it was gameplay, but the trouble is it was like this sort of highlight section with tons of QTEs. I'd like to see another gameplay video of maybe the sort of normal stuff, what you're doing most of the times, or is the whole game this actiony, crazy QTE stuff? You know, obviously they're not going to show that sort of package. They're going to show the big highlights at the event. But I thought I'd like to see some more normally stuff, just, you know, fighting goons and doing some side missions, and rather than these big story events like that. But there was a lot of QTEs in that. I don't mind QTEs, just don't overuse them. If the whole game's QTEs, tons of them, I'm not too sure about that. And that's coming out in 2018. And then, also one of the things was, I really like the use of the environment. There seemed to be a lot of times where Spider-Man could, you know, grab an object, swing an object, use an object to hit someone or vault over and stuff like that. That could be really interesting. And then, kind of just ended. And I was kind of like, it's just over an hour, which is quite short, especially for a Sony one in this massive theatre. They did do a pre-show stuff where they showed a little bit of Gran Turismo and stuff like this, and they announced Undertale for the PS4 and stuff. But the show itself was really good, but then just, it felt like there was like the last third of it missing. The last third where they show us Last of Us 2 or another big new IP or something. It just missed the crescendo at the end, and therefore the whole of the sort of conference felt a bit like the build-up and nothing. And so many of the games we'd seen before, it was nice seeing a bit more detail of Detroit and Spiderman and all these things, but nothing really jumped out at me. The VR games, there were a couple of new announcements, but had no interest in whatsoever. So, for the first time in a while, I was quite disappointed by the Sony conference. The weird bit was that they used this sort of, they had the Indian band playing along, and they had these waterfalls with the lights in the first couple of minutes, and then when they showed the, I've just totally forgotten its name. I'm just going to have to go back and look on my notes. What is it called? What is it called? Anybody? You don't even know what I'm talking about, do you? Days Gone, the zombie ship. And then that was the sort of first big cart, and they showed these zombies hanging from the stage and on ropes and stuff, and that was all cool, interactive. And then they kind of just didn't do anything more with this big stage in this giant theatre, really, apart from have some water effects on the crowd. And even at the end, after they showed Spider-Man, and even after the curtain came down and the lights changed, they panned on the crowd, and everybody's like, "Oh, is that it? No big Last of Us 2? No more info about Gran Turismo 2?" It just missed something. So, score-wise, I'm going to say it was good, but because of the massive disappointment at the end, it's really affected me. And I'm going to score it, as I see it, 4 out of 10. It just, a bit more information about lots of games we already seen and already knew about, but no crescendo, yeah? There was no money shot, right? And that was really disappointing. I'm interested, because there was lots of rumours about Last of Us 2 coming, and the fact it's not been shown. Has it been delayed? Are they not happy with it as it is yet? That seemed to be a weird one. Because it was almost like the show was too short for a Sony conference. I was expecting at least another 15 minutes. So maybe they cut it because they weren't happy, or that it's been delayed. I don't know. But there was just something missing from the conference. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. I'd like to know your thoughts on the Anthem versus Destiny 2 thing. That will be very interesting. What games are you hyped for? What games couldn't you give less of a shit about? VR's shit. But what other stuff are you in? I'm glad they didn't push this 4K nonsense all the time, like Microsoft did. That was nice. It's in 4K. It's in 4K. Every fucking game's in 4K. We get it. I don't even own a 4K television. Fuck off. I'm not that rich. Right. There we go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the coverage of the E3 this year. I will be doing it next year as well, and any other sort of big conferences that come up. I might do some live streams of so we can chat about it as it's going on and upload those to YouTube for future. But I really enjoyed doing this series. If you're interested in any of my other content, I do Football Manager and Motorsport Manager and other stuff. Lots of stuff coming up. The new Darkest Dungeon DLC's coming out. Might even get back into XCOM with the new DLC announced. And there's about 6 or 7 games that have come out of this E3 that I'm like, yes. I think the problem is they're like all coming out in October. So busy month then. But thank you very much for hanging with me, guys. I really enjoyed it. I love you all. Bye-bye.